Dr. John Carswell.
Well, I'm delighted to be here with you today. Thank you to the family for indulging me the privilege of sharing a word or two about Dad. Thank you for Mike for the invitation to share a few words. Delighted to be here because I have waited for 50 years to have the last word on my father. So brace yourselves, because this is going to be an honest and truthful telling in large part. Funerals make for wonderful reunions, and the absence of one is in a strange way compensated for by the presence of the many. And my sisters and I have had a few good laughs these last few days, remembering our life with Mom and Dad. And it's remarkable that of our four very different experiences of growing up with Dad, there were some common themes that kept recurring. Many of you will know that he had a wonderful sense of humor. He was a great storyteller, and he could hold the attention of the whole room if he wanted to. He could be, and often was, the life of the party. But Dad was also a bit like having salt and pepper in the same shaker, and you were never quite sure what was going to come out. And when it did come out, whether it was laughter or tears, you were just never quite sure of how it fit with the thing that came immediately before it. So a couple of stories that will perhaps fill in the blanks for you. When we were growing up, Mom and Dad had a pop-up camper, and in that little camper they took us to see some of the most beautiful places in America. We visited the Grand Canyon and throughout the Southwest. I'll never forget the day we stopped at the Four Corners, that unique intersection of the four states, Arizona, Colorado, Utah, and New Mexico, and I will never forget the thrill of having a limb in each state. We visited the back country of Colorado and fished in mountain streams and ate mountain trout, bundled up in sweaters and blue jeans in the middle of the summer, which was something incredible for those of us familiar with the heat of South Texas. We visited the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee and many other places as well. But always, when we could, we stayed at KOA campgrounds. Those of you who have had any camping experience will know that a KOA campground is a special experience. Invariably, and especially in the Southwest, there was always a swimming pool at the KOA, and after a long drive through the hot summer afternoons, we were ready for the pool, the four of us, my sisters and I. And I think my parents were as happy to see us go as we were happy to leave them. When we left, we were able to avoid the inevitable impending domestic crisis of parking and setting up the camper. When we arrived at the campsite, we all held our breath, holding hands, gritting teeth, hoping that this time, maybe this time, Dad would be able to back in the camper on the first try. And he never managed it. And as we sat quietly in the back seat, we just hoped against hope that this time he wouldn't lose his mind in the process, but he always did. And if we got to go to the swimming pool right as we got there, that saved us a lot of grief, because usually by the time that we got back from the pool, the camper would be set up, the storm would have passed, and Mom and Dad would have had the lawn chairs set up, each with a refreshing gin and tonic in their hands. And when we saw that, we knew that the worst had passed. We remember the nightly drama of setting up the camp, but we also remember the pleasures of Dad's evening storytelling, especially the ongoing tales of Siobhan the fairy He must have noticed our peculiar delight with the reflection of his watch bouncing off the ceiling of the camper. And he told us it was a fairy whose name was Theoben. And we believed him, and never tired of listening to the tales as they poured forth from what seemed like a bottomless well of imagination. Such a wonderful gift that he gave to us, especially after enduring the horrors of watching him back in the camper. Blessings and curses, love and anger, salt and pepper, all tumbling out of the same shaker. Another trauma that was familiar to all of me and my sisters was making the mistake of asking him for help with your math homework. Dad was always proud of his Scottish education and regularly reminded us of the gross inferiority of the US system. And so when we admitted defeat and had reached the point of desperation, we came to him hoping that this time, maybe this time, he could just give us a simple answer. And it never happened. And invariably, he would say, well, bring me your book and a fresh sheet of paper. And he'd open up the book at chapter 1 and proceeded to go through everything that we'd already covered in the term. And we were expected to dismiss all the rubbish we'd learned at school and embrace the right way, the Scottish way of doing things. Sheena remembers, I'd be crying hysterically, and he'd tell me to go to the bathroom and dry my eyes and blow my nose and come back to the table with a clean piece of notebook paper and a pencil, and we would continue working through the assignment. Sheena, it is to your credit that when you went to the bathroom, you didn't crawl out the window and run away. Fiona says he'd reach across the table and thump me, somehow expecting that would help me focus and learn. If you don't know, thumping is an important feature of post-war Scottish education. And I can assure you Dad was thumped many, many times in school. Now, I never cried during those sessions, but would sit under the table clenching my fists, wondering why I'd fallen into the trap of asking him for help, and yet staring in wonderment that he could still do these maths problems decades after learning how to do them himself. He was there for us, trying to be a good parent. He cared that we got a good education, but it came with a trauma that was almost comical in its bombast and outrage. Blessings and curses, love and anger, salt and pepper, all tumbling out of the same shaker. Many of you will know that when Dad retired from a long and very successful career at Dow Chemical, he took an interest in psychology and went back to school to earn the college degrees that had eluded him in his youth. He did an undergraduate in American jurisprudence, following it up with a master's in clinical psychology, and finally becoming a professional licensed counselor. Now, we were, of course, proud of him, but we were incredulous at his subject. Listening to Dad spout off about psychology was like listening to Fidel Castro talk about the glories of democracy and capitalism. It was all just a little bit too weird. And I remember him telling me once that he was going to meet with some parents and their young son with whom they'd had some considerable difficulties. I'm going to talk to them about parenting skills and mediation. Parenting skills, right, okay. Since when did you become an expert on parenting? Can I come along? Because I think this will be very entertaining. And I could just imagine him sitting down with these troubled parents and their wayward child and suggesting, what this boy needs is a good thump. And when was the last time that you boxed his ears? Because clearly he needs it. I never stopped wondering, Dad, when are we going to get a mediator? When are we going to practice some of these skills of alternative dispute resolution? When are we going to discuss our differences like adults? Blessings and curses, love and anger, salt and pepper, all tumbling out of the same shaker. I used to love hearing about the kids he was working with and the stuff they'd been up to. Dad had a stubborn and amazing love for these troubled children. And he was always able to see potential when everyone else was ready to wash their hands and walk away. They called him Mr. Bob affectionately. I was talking with a boy today, clever kid. He got into trouble when he stole a plane. He stole a plane. Aye, he did, the little pot licker. Did he have his pilot's license? No. He just played a lot of video games. Dad had a fondness for the outrageous, and I think he liked this kid. Or the time he came home and said, yeah, I was talking to a teenage girl and she'd been cutting herself. She had scars all the way up her arms. And it's the sort of comment that leaves you speechless. Yeah, her stepfather. What he needs is a Glasgow kiss, a headbutt. Oh, he's long overdue for a good kicking. Give me 5 minutes and I'll sort him out. It was a deep and righteous anger born out of a compassion for the vulnerable and the hurting. Recently, he told me, yeah, I've been counseling a group of geriatrics. Oh, really? Okay. How old are these people? My goodness. And do they know that you're 87? Well, they're their late 60s and early 70s. And why are they in the hospital, Dad? Well, they're all suicide risks. A statement in and of itself. I was thinking, well, what are you going to tell them? Get off their arses and quit being so stupid. No, he said, I'm working on them with goal setting and personal reflection and making amends for past errors and offenses. Are you now? I wanted to ask, what do you know about personal reflection? And when was the last time, in fact, when was the first time that you apologized to anyone for anything? Who is this man? Blessings and curses, love and anger, salt and pepper, all tumbling out of the same shaker. Dad's grandchildren, some of them are here today, all remember him with a deep, though perhaps guarded, affection. He told us to hush up a lot. Grumpy grandpa. A little crusty on the outside, but warm and tender on the inside. Like many grandparents, he was like a cat that had been declawed. Playful and indulgent. There was something softer about him with his grandchildren, something tender and beautiful and lovely. They admired his scholarship, his massive collection of books, his love of a good cigar, his Texas belt buckle, his woolly jumpers and flannel shirts, his fascination with teddy bears and dogs and cats, his marvelous storytelling and his willingness to listen to them and help them think things through. He followed their lives with keen interest and was always glad when they came to see him. He had a way of getting into their hearts that was unique and precious and wonderful to behold. Who is this man? Blessings and curses, love and anger, salt and pepper, all tumbling out of the same shaker. As you know, 2 weeks ago, Dad suffered a massive stroke that left him with irreparable damage to his body and mind. If he'd been visited by an insurance agent, he would have said, "Oh, he's totaled. He's a write-off." He never recovered consciousness and died 2 days later. Something for which I thank God, because he would have been a dreadful patient and an onerous burden to my mother, which is something that he would have never wanted to do. For friends, as you know, there are things far worse than death. And I am glad that he was able to die and move on from this life. For he was always a restless man, never quite satisfied with things as they were, and always looking for something a little bit better, and invariably a little grumpy about not finding it soon enough. God grant to him rest and peace eternal. I want to close with the reading of a note that Dad wrote to his one and only great-grandson, my grandson, Nathan, a wee fellow who Dad sadly never had the chance to meet. One of the things that most endeared Dad to his family was his habit of buying each one of his children and grandchildren their very own teddy bear when they were born. And this bear he chose carefully at the Build-A-Bear workshop, and then composed this note and sent it to Nathan in England. All of us, including my mother, were amazed at these words. Dear Nathan, I have much pleasure in sending to you your own official teddy bear, capital letters. All the Carswell children have an official bear. At the moment, he can sit in the corner of your crib, keeping a watchful eye on you. When you're older, you must give him a proper name, which will be registered. As you grow up, the bear will be your friend. And when you are feeling a little sad, you can talk to your bear. He will understand. And if you listen very carefully, he will answer you back. His advice is always good and may be relied upon in all matters. Some old people will try to tell you that teddy bears do not talk. Well, they do. But only to boys who love them and look after them. I have at least 3 full-grown bears and a baby bear, my friends and confidants in all matters. I hope to see you sometime, and you can tell me how you were getting on and what the bear has been doing. I think he'll be a good bear, as he was very carefully chosen. With love and best wishes, your great-grandpa,